Is the media obsolete? That might seem like a strange question to someone who's been watching EastEnders for 20 years, but I'm not talking about TV entertainment, I mean the news media. The vast majority of us have never been to Iraq or Afghanistan, and have never been to the House of Commons to watch Prime Minister's questions live, so the huge majority of what we know about the world comes from the TV news programmes and newspapers we read and watch. But does the mass media really give us the information we need to hear? Does it serve to exist us, the media consumer, or serve instead the corporations and governments who routinely pull the wool over the eyes of members of society? Is the mass news media even the best way of finding out about the world? What is the media for? The media, many would argue, is for sharing with us, the viewers, information about the world we live in. But everyone knows that the media gets accused of bias in its reporting. It's almost natural to assume that those in the media who are giving us this information would want it spun so that we all think a certain way. Many argue that the real people who decide what news goes into our newspaper are the advertisers who pay the newspaper to run their adverts. Some have gone so far as to say that the news in a newspaper is only of secondary relevance, and that the real function of a newspaper is to ask us to part with 80 pence upwards in order to view adverts that expose us to brand programming. In the same way that Richard Dawkins argues that it is the gene, not the human, that is actually alive, some would argue that newspapers are actually full of adverts that decorate themselves with news articles to increase their utility and chances of being viewed. Noam Chomsky's propaganda model of the media in his book Manufacturing Consent describes how the media form a decentralized and non-conspiratorial but nonetheless very powerful propaganda system that is able to mobilize an elite consensus, frame public debate within elite perspectives, and at the same time give the appearance of democratic consent. Media propaganda includes things such as pro-war propaganda in the lead-up to the Iraq War from The Observer and other newspapers. There are arguments we get better information from a distributed information sharing network like YouTube or Facebook, which are free of corporate bias, where we're the producers of information, not the corporations. What we are talking about here is control of the means of production, to use a Marxist term of reference. We should all be using news sources like indie media and disinfo. If you consider news a commodity like coal or steel, you can say that sites like Facebook and YouTube give individuals controls over the production of that commodity away from the bourgeoisie and towards the proletariat. Eventually, we would hope, news corporations would become obsolete. This would be a democratization of the media that would be intellectually effervescent and ideologically healthy.